Hey everyone, this is George Strezov with the new episode of For Music, which will begin the season 3 of this soundtrack podcast that we're doing. And in today's episode, I'll be talking to composer and multi-instrumentalist who I'm really happy to have on board, Seth Tsui. Seth is joining me from Singapore, and it's very exciting because not only he's an amazing composer that I've had the pleasure of conducting his music, but also, we worked together on a bunch of really exciting sampling products. So we have quite a lot of things to talk about. So Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Yeah, it's been amazing working with you and Strezov Sampling on all the projects that we've worked on. And I have to thank you in this most recent one, Jade Evolutions. You really gave me the freedom and the trust to do whatever I want and really make a special sample library. I think all composers always dream of making their signature library, combine a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but do it in a new way that's never been done before. Like for me, it was like the textural human quality of the sound from Olafur Arnold's Chamber Evolutions, or the super usable XY pad of Thrill by Galaxy Instruments, but using the unique musicians and ethnic flavor of Jade Ethnic Orchestra. And that was an amazing experience, and I can't wait for people to get to try
it. For those of you who haven't listened to Jade Evolutions, that's a sample library which actually gives the composers the possibility to morph between different sounds on a XY pad. So essentially creating these textures and pads, playable textures. And Seth, speaking of this, just before we start discussing a bit of your history as a musician,
sure.
What do you think when we speak about Jade Evolutions? How useful is this for you for example, underscoring tool?
Oh, it's amazing. It's a must-have, and I think people are going to be amazed just by how instantly usable it is. So I gave it to my assistant composer at Riot. We're using it on some internal Riot projects. I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you it's immediately paying off. I send it to him at night just saying, hey, try this out. Let me know what you think. And he texted me, oh my God, I just tried it. It sounds amazing. The presets you made are too good. It just sounds right. I can't wait for you to share your experience on creating these. It was just such a great feeling to get that back from him, to say, yeah, this is so immediately useful. And I hear it in his work, and everybody reviewing his work hears it and goes, wow, you're getting some really great textures with these instruments.
Sure. Yeah.
It's been wonderful.
Well, I think one of the most neglected thing is how to write interesting underscore music, because underscore music can be a bit boring, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, Jade Evolutions definitely gives you the possibility of doing something that's really fresh. How did you come with the ideas for most of those things?
Well, it's very unique. So it was all basically improvised or directed. There was no score. I just sat in the middle of a ring of musicians and directed what to play as the concertmaster using my erhu. So I play the Chinese violin, 2-string violin called the erhu, and I would sit in the middle and just play an articulation, play whatever came to my mind that I think, okay, this would stack really well, and I would play this and have a little bit of my own personality into it. Every articulation had a little bit of my own personality into it, and I told the musicians, hey, I want you to do the same thing, but interject your own personality into it. Have these little flourishes, these little bits that really make it human, that make it come alive. And in addition to just having those improvisatory little turns and textures, we really sampled every range of the keyboard. It's not like some people or some other libraries that have one sound and then it's stretched all the way up and all the way down, or it's just one sound throughout the whole keyboard. It's not stretched, but wherever you play on the keyboard, it's the same. This is like, I think it's the Strezov sampling hallmark that we sample too much. And
yeah, that's right.
here is definitely an example of that, where we sampled each range, and each range has a different performance. And each of those performances, since there's no score, every musician interpreted it differently. It interpreted the directions differently, interpreted what they're supposed to be doing differently, and even brought their own musical flair to it. And that's why I think it layers super organically. And it's very surprising when you play it in different octaves. It feels very different. You can wander through it and really find interesting things.
True. And do you think that your backstory as a musician, because most of the people probably won't know this, but apart from being a really amazing composer, you're also an amazing trombonist, and
Thank you.
You play the erhu, you play a variety of different woodwind instruments. You play guitars.
Yeah.
I've seen a video of you playing like the violin. So,
well, my main instrument is trombone, and I think everybody has this main instrument that is what enables them to communicate to an audience. And for me, especially with jazz music, I still play jazz music at least once a week on trombone with a small band, and that enables me to instantly compose, because jazz music, you're making the solos and improvised solos. It's instantly composing, and you get instant reaction from an audience. It's so different from composing for picture, where you can work very over and over on a couple measures, and then you give it to a director, and then a couple weeks later you find out. With jazz music, you instantly throw it out there, and you see the audience's reaction, or you hear the audience's reaction, and you can craft your solo in real time to be exactly what the audience wants. And through that experience, that's really how I learned to write music. And so when I write music for picture or for games, I'm thinking of the audience in mind. I'm thinking of where they're sitting, what they're doing, what they're thinking, with the story of the film or the game. And it's the same thing. I'm thinking, okay, what did I just play? Is that going to resonate with them?
That's really interesting. And do you try to also kind of think of what the director would also be thinking before they listen to the music?
Yes, of course. It's very interesting. So right now I'm mostly doing games. And with games, there's not such a director like you have with films. With films, You're normally writing for an audience of one, and then it also has to resonate with audience of millions. For games, you're writing for an audience of millions first, and then it sort of has to resonate with a board of people, like a committee of people that will say, "Oh yeah, okay, this fits." The world building that we've done before, or this fits the expectations we have for this character. And it's in some ways more creative, in some ways less creative, because with films, you oftentimes have a really brilliant director that can make these really bold choices. And with games, committees are never as brilliant as one person. But that a good game company will allow you as a composer to have the freedom to do something really bold with the music.
And can we talk with some examples? So currently you're working at Riot Games.
Yes.
So what's the committee there like? Do you have like an audio director, game designer?
Yes, all of the above. Normally, actually, what's really, really fun with Riot Games is that the music team, which is all composers, will workshop our music together every week and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. What do you guys think? And so before it gets to that committee of people that don't know music, it's already gone through a team of people that are just there to support you and help you and share their experience. And you have these incredibly talented composers that are also incredibly humble, giving their experience and saying, oh, that's great, but have you tried just tweaking the EQ on this a little bit, or rewriting the bass line of this so it doesn't clash here harmonically, or changing the harmonic rhythm here just a little bit? These things that you would never get from a director. You never have a director ask you to change the harmonic rhythm, but you would in a music team situation. But unlike what people oftentimes think of with Riot is, okay, we have a big music team, so everybody is together working on projects. That's not how it is. Actually, every project is written by a sole composer. We just have the resources of the whole music team for feedback and help on it, but every project is the brainchild of an individual composer. Yeah.
And do you get to also work with different like orchestras and ensembles?
Yeah. We do.
Do you have the for example, in this music team, is it common for instance for you to compose the music and for somebody else to oversee the recordings, for example?
It will be for me because I'm in Singapore. But normally when we do it, I guess sometimes, it is composed by somebody and overseen by somebody else. But normally that composer does shepherd it through the entire process, even if they're not conducting it like you do. We don't have a lot of really great conductors, so we need more people like you.
So you started. You mentioned the jazz background. This is actually what got you into film music at first, right?
Yeah. So I was a kind of a session trombonist. Well, I was trying to be a session trombonist. I wasn't really making it as a session trombonist because, who wants to hire a session trombonist, really? So I met somehow some really good session trombonist gave me a gig. He's like, hey, just sub for me on this gig. And it was for a film composer. And I didn't know what a film composer did. I thought they sat in a room writing on Sibelius or writing on manuscript paper. And I didn't realize just how creative it was, how composers can just change a melody on the fly, or change a harmony, or change an orchestration just on the podium. And that creativity just, it was like improvisation. It was like jazz. I realized that's what I want to do. So at that point, I just went full force composer mode, just trying to do it. I had never taken a composing class in my life, actually, and I still haven't. But I knew how to play music, and I knew how to structure music from playing jazz and writing music for the performing ensembles that I did, and that sort of got me into writing music for film.
And I suppose that you don't necessarily need composing classes if you've played from within the orchestra the music of I don't know, Tchaikovsky or something.
Yeah.
So you kind of learn from the. So do you think that being an instrumentalist helps you?
Oh yeah. It's huge, and especially Tchaikovsky is a funny example that you say that, because that definitely made me realize what is hard for a horn player to play, because I would sit in the orchestra and da 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 dee da 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 yeah da like these things that we think, oh, this is the most beautiful line I've ever written as a composer. I just want to give it to the orchestra and have them make it wonderful. And then we get this sinking feeling when we realize, oh, this is too hard to play. And so it's such an important thing for me in all my pieces that I write, that it's possible and it's doable within the time frame that I have to record it. And that experience from sitting in an orchestra and being there, being one of the musicians, really definitely helped to that.
So, and do you remember the composer, the name of the composer that inspired you on that gig that you?
It was Kevin Kiner.
Right. And afterwards you went to LA, and there you started working in remote control, or? I
started working for Heitor Perea in remote control. I got the job as the tech, the lead tech, actually the only tech at the time. But then as the studio expanded, I was the lead tech in his studio, and that was uh, a really great experience because it let me know how to really run the templates of the big boys. To have these multi-computer VE Pro templates with tons and tons of instruments and mirror it across multiple rigs. I was the technical guy, and I had mostly musical experience at that time, so it was definitely a harrowing experience to just jump in with 2 feet and become the guy that everybody counts on to make sure everything runs all the time.
And you had to learn, I guess, Cubase or Logic.
Logic there, actually. Yeah. But at the time, everybody was switching to Cubase. Like every composer that was on Logic, like Ramin and Jeff Zanelli, they switched to Cubase, and the techs would talk amongst each other and be like, "So when are you switching to Cubase?" And I think Heitor and Henry Jackman were the two holdouts, are still the two holdouts. So really in Logic, because their workflow just works better that way. They can still write great music. I mean, John Powell still writes amazing music in Logic. So it's not really about the tools, but for the text it is. So for the text, I learned Cubase in anticipation that we would switch one day. We never did, but then when I got out on my own and I started doing the Vietnamese movies, that's when I switched to Cubase, and that's what I use now.
That's quite a team. So being close to Henry Jackman, Heitor Pereira, you mentioned Jeff Zanelli. Is it different as a vibe than, for example, the team at? What are the similarities between the team at Riot and the team at Remote?
The team at Remote, it's a bunch of composers that have their own studios, and and when I say studio, I don't mean like a space that has their overly expensive speakers and overly expensive microphones. We still have that at Riot, but I mean a place that has about 5 assistants or orchestrators or techs that are under them and are just working for them, as opposed to, and that's the remote control way, as opposed to the Riot way, which is each composer is just their own thing. They're just working as a solitary composer, but then they have this music team, which is the other composers, and they're all equal. All the composers, they just share knowledge, they share experiences, and they can share the music together.
And what is the difference between, for example, the time pressure? I suppose that things at Remote Control were very stressed due to deadlines and stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at Remote Control, it's always this macho thing of how much music can you get done, and there is a merit to that. I mean, you make a lot of movies, and you get your music in a lot of movies, and then like out of those movies, one of them will probably be a hit, and you'll probably get your name to become huge. But with Riot, there's less of that pressure because every single thing that we make is released in the company. It's released with one of our games, and so there's more of a pressure to get every little thing right, because every little thing is going out to hundreds of millions of players. But there's less of a time pressure because we're not working on 5 things at a time. There's like a lead composer, in this case Cole Hicks is our lead composer. He makes sure that every composer has a manageable workload. They're not loaded up with a ton of things at the same time, and so they can really give their full attention to each project. And that's why the projects end up sounding all amazing, because we actually have the time to work on.
And also video games, I mean, you work on something like half a year, 1 year. In my case, I've been like 2 or 3 years. With films, you don't get that luxury.
Yeah.
And especially TV series.
Yeah. Except for sometimes animation films.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. But for example, TV series, you can get like a weekly episodes that you need to.
Yes, that's true. So yeah, and I really enjoy the workflow of games. Just having a lot of time to really develop your creative ideas.
So I suppose being the tech guy really helped you, because you're now your own tech guy, I suppose. So do you think nowadays composers need to know this, or can they
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like there's more and more of the composers that are coming up are their own techs. And the thing is with all of the remote control composers, they were their own techs when they were coming up, but when they got into remote control, they have the luxury of having a tech all the time. Um, they have actually vast technical experience, oftentimes way more than we do in the old technologies like analog. Recording to tape, recording on consoles, mixing on consoles. These things, like the new techs, we just fiddle with VE Pro. We like there's lots and lots of knowledge that we have that they have that we don't. And so to say that they can't be their own tech is totally a misnomer. It's just that the era that they came up and they were their own tech was a different era than they're in now.
Yes, and it also not so stressful in a way. Because nowadays, obviously, we all have our phones and we're available 24/7, and our everyday life is much more dynamic, and also there's a huge need for composers and for music, so demand becomes kind of bigger than usual.
Yes. Yes, but with the increased demand, I think so. A lot of people listening to this are probably going to say, "Well, where is all this demand? I want to, I want some of this. Can you guys give me some of these movies?" But what I found is that, if you're living in a place like LA or London, where there's a lot of composers, there's a lot of competition for the same movies, and it feels like the big guys get all of the work. Over and over and over again, because they have this proven track record of delivering on time and delivering a good product that everybody likes. If you get outside of LA and London, that's where you can really find a lot of this work. There are so many interesting stories being told outside of LA and London. So many filmmakers, so many game makers, especially outside of LA and London, that need composers and that don't have this built-in network like you do in those hubs. And that's where you can really find some interesting work. People like yourself who've really made a really strong local community. Everybody knows to talk to you in Bulgaria.
That's right. And also, I think that nowadays, I mean, obviously, we all want to, or at least I want to score the next Lord of the Rings movie. But there's so much other stuff that needs, like TV shows, radio programs, theater, advertising. I, for example, hate writing music for commercials and just like advertisements, but it's a job, and this is something that I've done for like 3 or 4 years. I would never do this. I would never touch this. Hopefully I won't need to touch any of this till the end of my life. But still, this is like an experience that you need to go through.
So with advertising, there's some good sides of it and some bad sides of it. So the good sides of it right now is that since library music is so prevalent, there's so many library tracks, every kind of library track for any kind of thing. If somebody asks you to write a piece of music for a commercial, they want composed music. They want music they can't get in a library, and there's some very specific reason why they want it. Maybe it has to match this edit exactly. That has to match this feel exactly. And so it's really great experience in communicating with a director and getting something that matches that in a really short amount of time. Versus what it used to be, which was, here, can you copy this track, because we can't find anything that sounds like this. And so, I had this experience of like they wanted something really unique and something really uniquely for the picture that they shot when I did the advertising music for DJI. So I did the new product launches for about 2 years. For DJI, like the drones and the little robot car and the gimbal and action cams. Yeah, that was a really great experience because advertising, as you know, is really demanding and it's really fast paced, and even it can change totally the genre, like right before launch, and you just have to rewrite it all before launch. But this is great experience, and again, they wanted that music. They wanted composed music for the specific reason that it was composed music, not because it was they couldn't find it elsewhere.
And do you write library music? Speaking of that, just curious.
I don't. That's something. So, with library tracks, I've had a few people approach me for them, but I just don't like the whole music supervision workflow, which is oftentimes less of writing a bunch of library tracks and more pitching the tracks that you already have, like getting it all set up with keywords and just writing thousands of them, so that when somebody has something, 100 times a year, you might get one of them, and that one is huge money. That's not really my thing. I would really rather write tracks specifically to picture or specifically to characters in games or advertisements or what have you.
I think that the best thing about library music is it's a bit of a gamble, so that this is something that I don't like, because you can write something that you pull all your emotion, you put your heart into this, and then it just sits on a shelf, but on the other hand, it's a great learning tool, because usually what libraries are, they're just like copies of something that's successful. So for example, now we have like The Last of Us, and probably there'll be like a bunch of albums of soundtrack similar to The Last of Us. And you get to write something like this, which probably you might not have the chance to do it, or you might, but still it's a learning curve.
In this business, something I always say is you can't usually choose what you work on. And you can't usually choose who you work for, but you can choose where you live. And that usually chooses the first two for you. So if you live in a place that has a lot of library music being done, especially at an entry level, that's what you'll probably end up doing. If you live in a place where you're the only composer in town, and there's a couple interesting projects going on, that's probably what you'll be doing. If you live in a place where there's a fairly high amount of projects and there's a fairly low amount of composers, then you don't have to write any library music, because everybody's coming to you because there's only so many composers and there's way too many projects. And that was China for me. That was what I really enjoyed about being in China.
This was so this was a very bold move, I would say. I would personally I would be hesitant to do it. I was invited to go to LA, to London, and I never wanted to do it because I already had established myself in a way here in my country. But how did you decide, to grab your things and go to Beijing? That's from LA to Beijing.
Well, it was after, it was after striking out at a lot of things. So I did. I did the remote control work, and then I quit that to do some Vietnamese movies. I did 3 Vietnamese movies for a really brilliant company, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And then the company folded. The company went out of business, and so I didn't have regular work anymore. So I was applying to a lot of video game companies. I applied to so many video game companies. I got even interviews at some of them, and I went to GDC and I made a VR game to showcase my VR music writing and implementation skills. I just coded it. I went and I got a co-working space where I knew a lot of coders were at, so I could take my laptop and go there and just kind of like sit at this thing and just look pathetic until somebody helped me to code it. And somebody did. Like the guy next to me was doing some really, really complicated AI thing. He just leans over and goes, "Hey, you missed a semicolon." And doing that enough, I got this demo, and then I wrote the music for it, and the music was the easy part because I already knew how to do that. And I implemented it in a way that was like you're in an Atmos theater, but it's in headphones, and this is before Apple Music had that. So it was Atmos in the sense that you turned your head around and you could hear the sounds coming from not only all around you, but above you and below you, just because you turned your head around. And I thought this was a really cool idea, and especially when you peg the music to events happening on screen. So I did a retelling of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells,
Okay.
and like when the walker would come in, I had the big walker theme in the music coming from that direction, but not like mono in that direction, kind of like this immersive soundscape that enveloped you and just gently pointed you in that direction, so you knew what to look at. And I thought this was a super cool idea. So I gave this to a lot of people at GDC, and I got this one composer was really interested. He's called the Fat Man. He's this legendary video game composer. He's actually not fat, but that's just his name. And he was working for Magic Leap at the time. And he invited me to interview with them, and I did interview with them, but it didn't work. I interviewed at a couple other places. I didn't even applied to Riot Games. I never interviewed there because I didn't have the portfolio yet. But after striking out on every single video game company, I decided, well, there was this one guy at GDC that said, well, if you ever come to China, just give me a call. And so I said, well, what do I got to lose? So I did. I moved to China. I didn't speak Chinese at the time. I moved to China, and I gave him a call. And I said, hey, I'm here. Can I come write some music for you? He said, oh, yeah, sure. Just come over on Monday. And so I did. And I thought, like, this guy, he's just sitting alone at this table at GDC. I didn't realize that he was a big deal in China. He had like a 300-person company in Beijing, and they're all working away making these video games, and they didn't have any composers. So I just started making music for them, and that was a really great experience. That led to the next experience, to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I realized that the reason why that people in China especially don't hire composers or anybody from outside of China is because they need this thing called a fapiao, which is VAT tax receipt that you can only get from having a Chinese company, being like a Chinese business entity. So if you live in China and you have your own company in China, then you can work for these Chinese companies. But if you don't, unless they have a subsidiary in Hong Kong, like the big ones like DJI will have a subsidiary in Hong Kong, if they don't have that, then it's very hard to work for these smaller, and by smaller, I mean like sub 10,000 people kind of companies that are making tons of great stuff and that you would want to work for. So going to China, I realized, the only way to work in China is to be in China. And so I was there. I was there for the last 6 years. I built my dream studio there. I didn't know enough Chinese to tell the contractors how to build that studio, so I ended up building it all by hand. I learned a lot about woodworking and plumbing and electricity. But yeah, that was another great experience.
So let me get this straight. So you play the trombone. You taught yourself about music software to become a tech guy. You taught yourself how to compose. You learned Chinese.
And when I got to China, it's kind of hard not to, because everybody speaks it at you.
You taught yourself how to code with the help of AI guy, and you also built your own studio. Okay. I feel I've been being lazy. I've been lazy my whole life till now.
Well, the Erhu stuff, at least I had a teacher for that. When I went to China, I got a teacher for that
as well, because you played the Erhu really, really well. So this was, I suppose, was a big hit in China, right? Because I don't know how things there are, but I suppose that when you come from like LA, from Hollywood, with all this technological knowledge, and then you're also being able to not only compose but also perform one of China's most famous instruments. This has been like a bunch of check boxes, for
Actually, you'd be really surprised. I was never once asked by a Chinese director to play
Really?
erhu,
Okay.
or to even It's the exact opposite. They say if I wanted an erhu player, if I wanted a Chinese musician, I would have hired a Chinese musician. I hired you because you're the Hollywood guy. And then for all the scores that I've done outside of China, it's the exact opposite. They go, "Oh, you have this ethnic flavor. You play erhu. You know Chinese music. You know Mongolian music. We can have all of these colors, all these flavors in the music. I want all of it. Don't just make it a standard Hollywood thing. I don't want that. Anybody can do that. Make it yourself. Make it have this very personal flavor and flair to it." So yeah, I got experience, and I was always doing both of those projects at the same time, the ones in China and the ones outside of China, and I got experience doing. Sounding like a Hollywood composer. I got experience sounding like a Japanese composer, because a lot of the games in China, they really want you to create this kind of Japanese sound, which is also very different from the Hollywood sound, very different from the Chinese sound. And then I got experience sort of building what my own sound was like in the Hollywood projects and the global projects that had some more visionary directors that would let me do that.
And now that you've been there, is there a difference between the way people in the West and people in the East work? I mean, not only about the mentality, but just about technological side of things. Is there a difference between, like, in movie making?
I don't know about movie making because I'm always in the studio writing music, but I definitely know in the composing space, yes, there's definitely a huge difference. There's not as much of an arms race as far as getting the newest sample libraries or getting the biggest rigs of giant VE Pro templates in China as there is in the West. In the West, you have to have this 1,000 instrument VE Pro template, and look how many things I have at my command. In China, oftentimes people will have their set of sounds, and they have, I already have a pipa sound. Why do I need another one? I have this one. It works well enough, and that was something that I realized when I talked to Flying, our distributor in China, who also, in addition to being a distributor, he worked with Ample. He made the Ample China Pipa. He did the 3-body technology sample libraries. Not a lot of people know that, but yeah, he was one of my good friends in Beijing, and he continues to be a good friend. He's a good composer too, and he really had an eye on exactly what the Chinese market was looking for in terms of sample libraries. And yeah, it is smaller things, like individual things. That's why the 3-body stuff is split up like that and is priced that way. So people can get, I have all these instruments, but I don't have a yangqin, or I don't have a suana. They can just get that instrument. And that's how that is. Whereas in the West, even if you have all these instruments, you want all of them.
Yes.
And that's why we released Jade like this, because we want that. We want that big collection of instruments.
And do you play games now that?
Yeah, I do. I'm playing the Riot Games right now. I play League of Legends. I played the phone version, which is called League of Legends in China, but it's called Wild Rift elsewhere. I play that with my wife. She's actually a better player than me. She's diamond level, and I'm trying to like make my way out of platinum so I can continue playing with her. But it is super fun. I'm a jungler and she's a support, and we play together.
So tell me about a bit about like working from the other side of the recording room, being at the podium, conducting your own music.
Yeah, well, okay, so the biggest thing that I've conducted was the animation movie, the Monkey King animation movie that I came and to 4 Music, and I conducted with you guys. And that was very nerve-wracking at the beginning, especially because I hadn't conducted a piece like that big before, and I had master conductor George Strezov sitting in the control room, like watching my score, seeing and watching the video, seeing every time I messed up. But it is so, even though I'm not the conductor that you are and the conductor that a lot of the people listening to this podcast probably are, I still want to conduct my own scores because there is something about just having a gesture that translates into an emotion, or giving one instruction that doesn't have to be translated through somebody else, to just have the musician hear what you're saying and hear the intensity that you're saying it with, and then immediately translate that into music. That's magic for me. I love the experience, and I always know when I'm listening back, okay, yes, this is what I was feeling when I was conducting this. This is what I was thinking when I gave this musician this instruction. And sometimes it works out better on the recording, sometimes it doesn't, but it is definitely a different kind of music when you conduct it.
There's something similar that I remember seeing on a, was it a documentary or just like the behind the scenes of The Martian? Anyway, so it was Harry Gregson Williams, and he said something like this, that usually conductors at, in the concert hall, they would serve as a metronome in a way. So they need to keep up the tempo, not only the musicality and performance, but also the tempo and the whole tempo structure of the piece, of the symphony, for example. But on the studio, you already have like a click track embedded in the project. So I remember him saying that his job as a conductor is on the recording stage is to actually deliver the emotion, because the musicians are sight reading, and they don't know anything about the project. I mean,
yes, so you can get really big with your gestures or really small with your gestures, so that they're so big that they're unreadable, or they're so small that they're unreadable. You're translating an emotion. You're translating exactly what it needs to be. And that's especially valuable with film, because you've watched the film hundreds of times as the composer. You know exactly what emotion it needs to be on every single note. And they don't, because they haven't seen the film. They know what you wrote there or what your orchestrator wrote there. And so being that conductor is that real-time translating. It just gets back to what we were saying at the beginning of this, which is playing jazz. It's performing to an audience and hearing their reaction immediately.
And you said that you still play jazz. How does that work? You just go into a club with a trombone and you start jamming, or
so sometimes, but normally I play with a band. So my band back in China is called SWG, and in Singapore it's called the Rhythm Makers, and it's like a local band. Everywhere I go in Asia, they don't have a trombone player because it's Asia, so they're very happy to have a trombone player to just come and jam with them. And when I first got here in Singapore, all my trombones were shipping over, so I was looking for somebody to borrow a trombone from so I could play, because I was just feeling the itch to play. And I found one person that had this plastic trombone, this P-bone, and that I could borrow it. And it was, you could barely move the slide. It was the worst trombone I've ever played. And I showed up to the gig, nobody had ever heard me. Some of them, they knew me because I'd been to swing dancing classes, and I'm a horrible swing dancer. So they knew me a little bit, and I come there with this plastic trombone, and I get up on stage, and I'm playing jazz like I always do, and the piano player just stops, and she goes, "I didn't expect that." And I go, "What?" She goes, "You're really a trombone player." And I go, "Yeah, you didn't. Why didn't you expect it? Because I'm such a bad dancer?" And she said, "Yes." So apparently my dancing has a ways to go. But
maybe the plastic trombone also had an impact as well. So
maybe, but it was Valentine's Day, so it was a perfect, because it was red.
Okay, all right.
And it fit the theme. But yeah, I don't think anybody was expecting the guy with the plastic trombone to actually be able to play the plastic trombone.
And speaking of jazz, have you scored like a jazz soundtrack?
No, never.
Would you like to?
I'd love to. I would really love to, but it's just never come up. I think that's one of the kind of things that if we have something at Riot that comes up, that everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, give it to that guy." But it's one of those very rare things. Like, what kind of jazz soundtracks? Like Persona 5 has a lot of jazz in it. It's really jazzy kind of video game soundtrack. It's one of my favorites. there are a lot of jazzy film scores, especially musicals. My wife just loves musicals. She really wants me to do a musical, and I was doing one in China before I left, but the development cycle on that is just so long that I had to give it to another composer. I gave it to the guy who bought my studio, actually. Okay. Really great composer named Young Feng. He's doing the musical right now.
And I think there was a couple of years ago there was this game like Rockstar game called LA Noir, I think. So kind of
I didn't play that one, but I've listened to the music.
It's kind of like LA Confidential and Chinatown kind of vibe. So there are some projects that would. So fingers crossed that you get a gig like this. So
right.
Basically, because at the end we always have like 3 blitz questions, which are not that blitz, but But before that, I just want to ask you one last question about recording sessions. So, what are the challenges during like recording live music?
During recording live music, for me, it's always, did I write something that they can play accurately enough, with enough emotion in the time that I have booked for them to play? And do we have enough time? In certain orchestras' case, do we have enough time to layer that adequately so it sounds big enough? Do we have enough time to do it justice? And with recording sessions, it's always a ticking clock. And so nowadays, if I write music for orchestra, or even for chamber groups, I know exactly how long we have to record with them. I'm adjusting those numbers in my head while I'm writing it, thinking, okay, is this line hard enough? Is this a 2-take line? Is this a 4-take line? Kind of thing. And it really changed the way that I'm writing, because I want it to all be playable. I want it to all be not just playable, but really have the musicians thrive on this music by the end of the session.
And sorry, I'm not sure how if you're allowed to say this, but in your current example at Riot Games, do you work as a package deal, or do you have like a separate budgets for recordings?
You have separate budgets for recording. I guess, and that's a huge,
really,
huge difference, because otherwise, if you have a certain amount of money, say like $10,000 for a movie, and you go, okay, how much of this do I want to take out of my own budget for recording? You end up taking out a lot more than you would if you had a separate budget, because you just want it to be great, and it ends up being like, well, can we get another hour? Yes, we can get another hour. I'm paying for it. But at Riot, we have a separate budget, and we have a very generous budget normally for recording. So we'll sometimes have a whole day to record a few minutes of music with the whole orchestra, and in that case, yes, they always can thrive on this music by the end of the recording session, and that's why it sounds like it does. It sounds great.
Yeah. So, do you think that package deals are a good thing or a bad thing? Now that you've seen both,
I think Yeah, well, in my in my last 10 years of being a freelance film composer, package deals were always the way, because no producer wants to deal with, should we get 5 violins or 8 violins, or should we record for 2 days or 3 days, or 2 hours or 3 hours? That's something that the composers need to decide, and the package deal is a good way for producers to go, this is how much it costs, I can pitch this at the beginning of the project, I can spend this much money, and then it's on the composer to make the music, the best music possible with this amount of money. So it's a necessary evil of our industry, and it really gets you used to, because if it's your money, you know exactly how you're spending it, and even if you're spending it more than you would be if it's somebody else's money, you know exactly how you're spending it, and you know each minute just how valuable it is.
Gotcha. Or you can end up as like the music in from the early 2000s and 90s in Bulgaria, where nothing was recorded basically, so you would have this really bad synthesized music. So
yeah.
And just I promised my last question would be my last, but no. So I would break my promise now. Can you tell us a bit more about your interviewing? Because you mentioned the interviewing process at Riot Games.
Sure.
So how was that? It was quite long, right? So 5 months or six months?
Yes, 5 months interview. A lot of people talking. I can't tell about specifics of the interview process, but I can say that they weren't looking to interview me as in an audition. Like there was an audition involved. Like I did write a piece of music for them and I revised it, but it wasn't this kind of really nerve-wracking process of test your skills every single time. A lot of them, they were really just trying to get to know me, get to know my management style, get to know how I worked with a team, how I like what kind of things that I did in the past when I had various problems with subordinates and things like that that I really wasn't used to from my past interview experiences, because the past interview experiences have all been pitches.
Yeah,
you write a piece of music and either the director likes it or not. This had that element of it, definitely, but it had a lot more than that, and that's what kind of filled those gaps. So I wasn't just writing 5 months worth of music
yes.
for them to get this job. It was literally 5 months of interviews.
It's so similar to getting to like a corporate position, let's say, I don't know, scripting or like developer position. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Some of that, but I would say that the difference that I've seen, and I've had those interviews for other kind of corporate jobs, is that Riot definitely knows how to hire to the strengths of the person rather than to can people based on their weaknesses. Like at another game company, I was shut down because I didn't know coding as a composer, and that's something that never happened in the Riot interviews. I was interviewed by coders, but not on coding. I was interviewed by coders on leadership, or I was interviewed by artists on management, but not on things that I didn't do. And so that was what was really refreshing about Riot.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to learn like new engines, like Wise, Fmod, or something like this, or do you keep to writing music just?
I do have to do implementation, but I already did know how to use Wise, Fmod, Fabric, and ADX2 from doing various video games. I did a lot of video games in China, and by video games, one of them or three of them I actually did four of them I actually did the full scores for, and then two of them were live service games like League of Legends. They were王者荣耀 and Mobile Legends, which are exactly like League of Legends. In China. And so I had this experience of like writing music for a character that already fit into the established world building that they had, and that was a really attractive thing for Riot, I feel, because that one it's not creating an idea from scratch. It's not like scoring a movie with a director. It's can you write something that fits into this established theme of world building, but can you also make this piece of music that people love? And the first time that I wrote music for one of these MOBAs, it was Mobile Legends. It wasn't as big as League of Legends, but when it got out there, I thought, okay, yeah, this is a little piece of music for this little character. Not so many people are going to see it. Immediately, 5 million people saw it. And 5 million people commented. And this was one that you recorded at 4 for Music. This is the Natan theme. 5 million people saw it, and they even watched the behind the scenes video with the orchestra that we shot. And I was so surprised. Like, I thought people would nitpick. I thought people would say, oh, this music is no, just outpouring of love. So many people said, I love this music. This music makes me feel chills. This music is like the music to my favorite movie. This music makes me feel like I'm traveling through time. This music makes me feel like I want to be this character. And that's what it was really all about for me. I saw that people really loved the music, and that really reinvigorated me to do more video game music and to really approach this industry, because it's about the players. It's about the people, the audience of millions who really love the music more than anything else.
I've had a similar experience with my soundtracks, that resonates much more than anything else that I've done, because I've written music for a lot of TV shows and like films and stuff, and I mean, people would say normally, yeah, the music is great. Somebody would come after like a premiere or like a screening or something, or at a festival, and say, hey, the music is great job, and so forth. But what you said, this connection between what you've written and the players, this audience, this is something that games still have. I think that maybe film music doesn't have that anymore.
Some film music, but for games, I had this experience of going on YouTube and seeing somebody do a cover of one of my pieces, just do a piano cover of one of my pieces, and even notate my piece, just transcribe the whole thing, just by ear, and
that's amazing.
Have the comments be like, I just love this music so much, I had to write it. That's what it's about for me.
Awesome. So now it's time for our 3 blitz questions.
Okay.
So I would start with what would your dream project be?
My dream project, besides the ones that I'm working on now, which I can't talk about, probably if I were to get an independent project. Well, I've done a lot of my dream projects. The dream project for a while was to make my signature sample library that's so different from what anybody else has ever done and will ever do. And I made that with Jade Evolutions. But now it would probably be something that incorporates jazz or at least some kind of brass playing in a way that nobody's ever done before. It's not like a standard just jazz score, but it's maybe a futuristic jazz score, or it's an Asian jazz score, or something that only I could write. That would be, or that only I could write the music that I end up writing. I'm sure other people could write it, but it would be that thing that okay, this one I can do.
Blade Runner with swing drums and walking bass.
Something like that.
Okay. And what are your 3 most favorite and like impressive soundtracks for you? It could be either films or games. Yeah.
Films or games. Okay, I have too many to name. I'm just going to name the 3 that come off the top of my head as being really, really impressionable in the last few years. How to Train Your Dragon by John Powell, The Social Network by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and Bastion and Transistor by Darren Korb, which is a video game.
The last one I don't know it.
Okay, so, Bastion, and there's 2 games. Bastion is one, and Transistor is another by this composer named Darren Korb, and it's just one of these like very, very homemade, in the box Logic with loops kind of projects, but it is so good. It.
You send me some links.
Okay.
All right. Our time has come to an end. I would like to thank you so much for this interview. I hope that it was as interesting to you as it was to me as well. So I would love to close this episode with maybe some music that you've written. So
sure. Yeah. Well, how about I send you? I'll send you this piece of music that actually we recorded together. This was the one from Rung Tamang. It's also known as Tanang Fandang when we were working on this. It's about a group of friends who goes on a hiking trek in the beautiful Tanang Fandang mountain. And one of them gets lost in the forest, and another one goes after him. And it's based on a true story. Like, I won't tell you who lives and dies, but it's a story about surviving in the wilderness alone. And as you can imagine, the second half of the movie, when you're focused on the main character just trying to survive, there's not a lot of dialogue. So the music really has to tell the story. And the amazing thing about this movie is they shot it on location. And the only way to get there was this multi-day hike in the mountains. So they took the whole film crew, hand-carrying all the equipment, the red cameras, the lights, everything, all the way up to the mountain. So when they gave it to me, I realized this is so precious. This is a film that people have sweat for and bled for. I have to do it justice to the music. So I made some of the most beautiful music that I've ever made for that film. And my favorite track is the last one, Brothers Forever, which is the piece of music I'm going to give you now. When the main character is thinking about whether it was the right decision or not to go looking for his friend, he's remembering the experience, and he's actually going on the hike again, this time sticking to the trail. And we've got the whole string orchestra and 4/4 music to play backgrounds. And then we just had the principals of each section playing string quintet solo lines on top of that. And that sound, when the solo cello does a sweep and the whole orchestra echoes it, well, you conducted it, that's powerful.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that we weren't on location. So next time you should bring the orchestra and conductor on set. Okay, Seth, thank you so much. And now we're going to listen to Buddies Forever.